Hello again, and welcome to this episode of Little Bangor Stories, in which I take a walk through Bangor's walled garden on the edge of Castle Park with Nicky Kerr, the woman who creates the beauty behind those old walls. If you take a peek at our website, littlebangorstories.co.uk, you can see pictures of the garden, and I've even drawn a map so you can listen while retracing our steps and see how busy Mother Nature has been in a few weeks.
I came in February 2009, so the garden opened to the public, I think it was May 2009, so I was here for a couple of months alone. All the soft landscaping had been installed, and I was sort of, mainly working in the veg garden, so to get that year's vegetables up and running.
What had it been before it was opened up to the public?
So, this was obviously the original walled garden for Bangor Castle. Mm-hmm. So, the Ward family. So, it actually predates the present castle. So, there have actually been 3 castles on this site. And we think this walled garden is actually in relation to the second castle, which sat slightly to the west, I think, of the present day castle. It's on an ordnance survey map about 1840. And you can clearly see it marked, the 2 sections marked. It was gardened obviously for fruit and veg, cut flowers for the big house. And that would have been the case right up until the 50s, until Maud Ward sold to the council. And from what I believe, there was a gardener here until sometime in the 60s, just sort of pottering around. He produced peaches. I've had members of the public that have come in and said they remember coming in here as children and eating peaches from the original peach house. And then I think shortly after the 60s, it was more or less closed up and forgotten about. Mm-hmm. And certainly this section, the main section of the garden, was sort of closed up. The other section on the other side of that wall, which is the smaller section, the northern garden as we call it, was used for bedding plant production for the council. And that was the case probably up until the early 80s. We didn't have that many bedding plants. It was something that we could do ourselves, and then bedding plant demands went through the roof and we could no longer supply our own bedding. So that went out to contract, and it was growing outside beyond the council. And at that point then, the southern side or the northern section was more or less closed up and forgotten about as well. So by the time council had sort of decided they were going to do something with it, the place was completely overgrown. Greenhouses had either been removed or in a state of complete disrepair. There were some major trees through here. I think the gardeners in the past, council gardeners, hailed in whips that had been allowed to grow, and so the whole place was basically taken apart. Everything was emptied from it. I think the only original plant we've got left in this garden is the old fig in the very far corner.
Will we go? Let's take a walk over.
Yeah, we can go over, yeah. And I think that's probably the only original plant left. The greenhouses, that peach house was rebuilt. And whenever we first opened, we only opened the southern garden, this section.
Yes.
And the northern garden was still closed off. And then it was a few years after that we decided that we'd create something in the northern section as well. And that's whenever the sort of coffee shop and toilet block and that sort of thing, the bandstand got moved up here from Picky.
I think it's probably a testament to you that it looks like it's always been here. It looks like we're walking through, what are these roses?
Yeah, these are all roses, yeah.
I can imagine this bower matched the one maybe in Ward Park, and it was always here, and you just came and snipped a bit of foliage away and revealed it, but obviously it wasn't like that.
No, not at all, not at all. And we think historically this section, the larger section, was purely for fruit and veg production. Mm-hmm. We think the ornamental gardens that the family would have enjoyed was actually in the northern garden, the smaller section.
Yeah.
So now sadly there's very little information. I think whenever the whole estate was sold, a lot of the old information was lost.
Yeah.
So there's very little about.
That is such a shame.
The historic use of this garden and stuff like that. We do think, these sandstone blocks in the walls,
the larger ones.
Yeah, you see there, we don't really know what they were for, but my best guess is that they were used for straight lines because they line up with each other. So they were probably used as plough lines, so they could make drills and stuff like that and keep things nice and straight. But we do know whenever the bulldozers moved into this section to restore it, we did find the old path system. So we do know it was divided into 4 sections.
Okay, yeah.
Presumably that would have been a crop rotation basis.
Yeah.
Actually, the path structure that we're working on now was essentially overlaid from the old Victorian path structure.
And I love all your little hedges and things like that. That just evokes You've kept a little bit of that kind of Victorian
Certainly,
design,
yes.
haven't you?
Yeah, we have. And then, the original plan was to keep everything extremely Victorian, but we ran into various difficulties there. We couldn't find suppliers. And also, we tried to run this garden as organically as we possibly can. And with a lot of old Victorian varieties, they were very disease prone, and that wasn't really working for us. So we've actually swapped for more modern varieties. I mean, I've kept heritage varieties where I can, but certainly in the fruit and veg, we've swapped for more sort of modern varieties that have a certain amount of disease resistancy, so that we don't have to spray.
I notice over here there's a big wooden crate thing against the wall full of straw.
This is a little experiment.
Oh, right.
So one of my gardeners, Richard, was very keen to try a hot box. So this would have been a very Victorian idea. Back in the day, it would have been, the absolute pinnacle of horticulture would have been able to juice your own pineapples. Mm-hmm. So they would have grown pineapples in pits like this. So basically we dug down a couple of feet and then put in fresh manure, like stinking fresh manure. And then we capped that with a layer of really good topsoil. And then the idea is that as that manure decays, it produces heat. And we've now sown out some various little veg seedlings. Covered it, as you can see here, they're covered in like little mini greenhouses. And theoretically, we should get germinations a lot quicker.
And what's in there?
I think at the minute we've got beetroot in there, and I think some leeks have been sown as well.
So no pineapples?
No pineapples yet. We haven't got a pineapple plant.
Oh.
So if I can track down a pineapple plant, and then eventually what we'll do is once these get big enough, we'll transplant those into the veg garden main, and we're going to try melons in here, because it is a really sunny, warm corner.
I can feel the
and with
heat.
that additional heat, we figure that we should be able to grow some melons.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it's
Can't
away
wait
from
to
the
see.
public enough that we might actually not lose them to the public. Yeah.
Especially with children, they can't resist it, I suppose.
They can't. And I would sort of take a bit of a pragmatic view about these things. If some kid's going to pick some peas and eat them, I'm delighted with that. It's not something we encourage, but it's hard to, see the big juicy red apple in the tree. It's very hard to ignore that. So this is the original bandstand from Picky, just beyond Picky. That's the flat grass area opposite Skipping Stone Beach.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so this was the old bandstand there. Obviously the salt air, whatever, had led to a lot of corrosion. It was in a terrible state. And eventually the decision was taken to lift it, restore it, and bring it up here.
And it looks beautiful, gorgeous wooden roof, and it's all painted in black and gold.
Black and gold, yeah. Now it does. Unfortunately, it needs painted again, as you can see, but we have kids climb on it and stuff like that, so it's very difficult to keep the paintwork good.
You have your Giant Connect 4 in there, and I know you have a Jenga as well.
We have a Jenga, Giant Connect 4, we have various other little games and stuff like that we bring out, yeah.
And you know what, if it needs a painting,
yeah,
that's fine.
It'll get done at some point.
Used and loved,
yes,
doesn't
exactly.
It?
And it'll get done at some point.
Beautiful lawn.
Yes, this is our sort of prize lawn, if you like. This is the lawn that we put a bit of effort into. The other lawns, really, we have different cutting regimes throughout the garden where we leave grass long or cut it less frequently. But this is our sort of prize lawn. Very popular with the kids, as you can see.
The kids, and also then for the festival.
The open house.
Open house.
They do a thing in August. So for about 2 weeks in August, there's a big stretch tent goes across this lawn, seating for about 300 people, and shows every day.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. It's a lovely atmosphere in the tent, isn't it?
It's
Looking out at the
lovely.
garden, it's really nice. Exactly.
Now, where's this fig tree?
This is it here.
Oh, in the corner.
Right in the corner.
My goodness, and is that it just starting to
That's it,
bud?
just starting to leaf out now.
Leaf
Yeah,
out.
figs are relatively late to leaf in comparison to most stuff. But you can see the little figlets.
Oh, wow, can you eat them?
Not yet.
Not yet, but you can.
You can
Will
eat
they
them.
ripen?
Absolutely. Oh, they do ripen, and in good summer particularly. Last couple of summers we haven't had too many ripe fruit. The problem is the ones at the top are the ones that tend to ripen first, and unfortunately the blackbirds tend to get to them long before we do, or indeed the wasps. But occasionally you get lucky and you'll find a nice ripe one. And it's an old unusual fig. This one, it's a sort of, the figs are kind of banana shaped. They're elongated, and it's a fig that I haven't seen before.
Well, just
the leaf shape's slightly different as well.
Yeah, you pointed out the figlets, and
Yeah.
now it's like anything. I can't help but see them. They're just everywhere.
They're everywhere, yeah, and they are that slightly elongated. I mean, most figs tend to be quite round, dumpy little things,
Yes.
but these are quite elongated. But I've no idea of the variety. I've done a bit of research. One fig leaf looks pretty much like another fig leaf, so it's impossible to tell.
Any idea how old it is? Though?
No, not really, but I mean, I doubt it's one of the original plants dating from the 1850s, but I mean, it might be. We just don't know, essentially we don't know. Like I said, there's very little records
It's the old man of the garden anyway.
It is the old man of the garden, certainly. And unfortunately, we had to hazard tape this area off because the kids run through there. Obviously, that's a great place for kids to run around in.
If I was 5, I would want to do that
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. But unfortunately, we've also got some really nasty roses up here.
Oh, yeah.
There's roses right
Yeah.
through here, very, very prickly. So I had to tape it off
Yeah,
because I was just worried about kids.
Just looking at this, yes, the stems
Yes.
of these.
Yes, I mean, that is one of my favourite roses in the garden. That's a rose called Wild Edric, and it is absolutely stunning. Disease-free rose. Huge, big, peony pink blooms that smell of cinnamon.
Oh, gorgeous.
It is absolutely gorgeous, and it flowers, and it flowers, and it flowers.
But it's vicious.
But it's pretty vicious. Yeah, yeah.
And nobody's getting anywhere near
Nobody's
them.
getting anywhere near that, exactly.
You said that you try to be as organic as
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
So do you have a massive compost heap somewhere, or?
Well, actually, no, we don't, because we don't have the room to do. We do recycle. It goes into a bay in the works yard, and that all then goes off to the green waste.
So the stuff that we would put in our green bins, so
exactly.
you send yours to the same place.
Exactly. We did used to use the compost. We used to bring the compost back into the garden.
Yeah.
But we actually now prefer using leaf mould.
Oh.
So we collect in the autumn time. The various works guys go out and they collect a lot of leaves from Castle Park and Moor Park, and we dump them in a big pile up at the top of the hill there in Castle Park.
Oh yes.
And we leave them there for 3 or 4
I
years.
have seen those on walks
And
through the
yeah,
park.
and that's leaf mould, and that is gardener's gold, that stuff, you know.
Absolutely.
We absolutely love it. So we just drag that down in the winter time. We bring a certain amount of manure in as well, and then we bring a lot of wood chip in for mulch,
Oh right, okay. Yeah.
just to keep the weeds down.
Yeah.
This is our auricula theatre.
Oh, this is lovely. What's the idea of this?
So auriculas are they're primroses basically. They're very fancy primroses, and they've been grown for 400 or 500 years and shown, and people would have made quite a lot of money from having a prize auricula. And the Victorians got quite involved with them, and the Victorians would display them in a theatre, which is basically what this is. So it's like a black bookshelf.
It's beautiful.
The little auriculas go into terracotta pots, and as they come into flower, they get set out, and as they go out of flower, they go into the coal frames on the side of the greenhouse. And we just have this auricula display. So it usually, this is our first year for it.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Did you get somebody to make those cases for you?
Yeah, one of our own guys made
wow.
them. Our own staff made their own parks guys. So it was in the depths of winter, in the big shed there, and they put these together. We then bought the plants and grew the plants on, and the array of colours is just amazing in them.
The theatre is gorgeous,
Yeah.
again in gold and black with lots of fancy little embellishments. I love the black and gold VIP rope.
Well, this was the idea.
genius.
We were a bit concerned about these getting lifted, basically, and people helping themselves to them, because obviously small plants and very easily removed. So my idea was that we put up this sort of VIP.
Well, they are VIPs because
just to keep people back from them.
Because I'll be honest with you, Nicky, some of them actually don't even look
real. They look like fake flowers. They're so ornate that they look completely like false flowers. They look like something you see in a cartoon.
Really, really beautiful.
They're absolutely gorgeous little things, aren't they? There's a couple of nice old Irish varieties in here as well that are slightly scented. But yeah, they've been. We're delighted with them as a team, because we started last summer.
Just gorgeous.
And
you say that's for people to look at and enjoy, but obviously not to take, nor can you buy them. Do you sell any kind of plants?
no, we don't. Is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Now we are planning this year to ask for donation for the fruit and vegetables. So in previous years we've given them to food banks, and we still probably will give a certain amount to food banks, but this year we've got some volunteers that are very eager to supply to the public.
Yes.
On a Saturday morning. And then any proceeds from that will go to the Mayor's Charities. Yeah.
We're standing now outside this lovely greenhouse.
Yes. So this is our working greenhouse. This is the greenhouse that we don't allow the public into.
Okay.
As you can see, it is absolutely chock-a-block.
So it has all your cuttings and seedlings and things like that?
Yes. So we have a lot of dahlias in the garden as well, which all have to get started off in the greenhouse. They have to get lifted out of the ground. They get stored underneath in the winter. Come February, they get potted up. And this is them growing on, ready to go out in the next
So I think
month.
it's important to say that visitors can they can get into the wall garden in the wintertime, or does it close?
We are open all winter.
You're open.
Yeah, we're open
So-
all year round.
But people might wander around and think, oh, there's not much going on here. But actually behind the scenes,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so you walk in here in January and the place is bare, it's not, but it's January,
Yeah.
Even in January, though, there's still stuff to see. You know, we've got witch hazels and we've got a couple of bits and bobs, but obviously...
But you and your staff and your volunteers and everything are busy doing all
Very
this.
very busy behind the
Wow.
scenes. And then we return, we have all our vegetables coming on. And it's just everywhere you look, there's plants. Excuse me, guys.
Hello.
These are my lovely volunteers. These are all tomatoes and squashes and various climbers, strawberries, all sorts of things. They're all squashes, pumpkins, courgettes, getting ready to germinate and get moved out.
Do you know what? It looks a lot and then it doesn't look a lot, but then it will produce a lot, won't it?
It will.
I mean, they're
It
tiny
will.
at the minute,
Yeah.
but they're...
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad to see all the mugs and things like that for the volunteers. This is where they had the chilies.
This is where we have the chilies, yeah. So in September, the greenhouse is fairly empty because all this stuff is obviously planted. And we bring the chilies in here, and the chilies sit in here for the chili festival.
So we've been to see the old fig. What's the newest part of the garden then?
You're actually standing in it right now.
Oh, right, okay, this grass.
So this grass,
just beside the big greenhouse.
just beside the big greenhouse. So originally, the only grass in this area was that lawn.
Yes.
And we had a nursery bed that ran alongside the greenhouse, which was this grey slate, and we used to set out plants, and it was extra room for us. And last winter, I was like, this is just not, you know, it was tired. There were 2 phoenix palms in here that weren't doing very well, and I was like, yeah, we need to do something with this area. So I came up with a plan of extending this lawn through this area. So we've lawned it. We've continued on the line of espaliered, step over apples. Along the line there, we've made a little cold frame area for ourselves, a little closed off area. This was mainly to do with the auriculas because the auriculas need a cold frame. So this area then had to be cordoned off to the public because we didn't want the public getting into the cold frame. So that's why we put this up. We've got apples here, which are going to be sort of trained in a diamond shape. And then next winter, we're going to checkerboard this lawn.
Oh, how do you do that?
So in other words, we've got big slabs, 6 by 6 slabs, and we're going to make it like a chessboard. So stone grass the whole way through here. So it'll be like a big chessboard.
Okay, so somebody gets a big ruler and a pencil and a big sheet of paper out.
Yes, it'll be tricky to do. We were hoping to get it done for this winter, but as things happened, we just didn't get there. And it's not a bad idea to let this grass establish because this grass only went down in January. So we'll let this fully establish before we start hacking at it.
Brilliant. You know what I love about here? There's hardly a wall that you look at in this garden that hasn't got something growing up it.
That's very much the aim. Yeah, because the walls, I mean, it's a walled garden, so the walls are just an additional space, you know, that we have to use.
Do they hold heat?
Yeah, of course they do, yeah. That's the whole reason behind a walled garden is that it becomes this little microclimate. So particularly the south-facing walls, like we're looking, this is obviously south-facing, so there's another fig, younger fig there. And this whole border here would have originally had greenhouses along it because it's the sunniest border. So a lot of the plants that we use on these borders tend to be quite tender plants, stuff that can really enjoy the heat and needs the heat to produce the flower.
And then round the corner here we have the other kind of hot house.
Yes, this is the peach house round this corner.
Peach house?
It was originally for growing peaches, solely for growing peaches. So we put peaches back in at the beginning, 2009. And the problem that we had was they were absolutely munched alive by red spider mite. And we were trying to control the red spider mite, couldn't control them, and eventually I decided, look, no more peaches. So now this is purely ornamental really in here. We did have a large apricot at one point, but it's bit the dust last winter, succumbed to various cankers and stuff.
Even from here, I mean, these are quite exotic looking plants.
Yeah, so we've got the main plant in here is Strelitzia, the bird of paradise. You can see these are the flowering spikes coming up now. So it's nice to have bird of paradise flowering in Northern Ireland. It's not something you would typically see. And it's not a heated greenhouse, so it's automatic, but there's no extra heat in there.
Yes.
But the Strelitzias absolutely love it.
I mean, the gorgeous windows that are.
Yeah, so that's fully automatic.
They're open. And do they react to temperature?
React to temperature. Absolutely.
Would they have had them in the original walled garden?
No, it would have all been manual. I'm sure.
Somebody with a big long metal pole.
And I suspect that probably the original greenhouse had heating. You know, these old Victorian greenhouses tend to have pipes running through them.
Of course, that's right.
That
they did.
they would have used for heating.
They did. And we're walking through a lovely area here, and
This is our orchard, wildflower orchard.
Two people are sitting at little desks sketching.
They're
or painting.
sketching, yeah, painting, yeah. So these beds at the minute are empty, but we are just getting ready to do a wildflower sowing in here. So I say wildflower, technically it's half-hardy annual sowings with a lot of wildflower mixed through. Beneficial insects, that sort of things. We just need to weed these out and just wait for the nighttime temperatures to warm up a little bit, and then we'll sow these beds. So if you come back here late summer, these beds are an absolute riot of colour.
I've seen them, and I think these beds in particular, for anybody who loves taking pictures of flowers, and especially children around flowers, this has got to be the number one Insta site in the whole garden.
It's funny you should say that, because look at my screensaver here. Is my son standing
right in the middle,
right in the middle of it all. Yeah,
it's just when this place blooms, it's joyous.
Yeah,
it really is.
I know, and it's a wee bit miserable at this time of year, but that's just the nature of it. You know, it's.
But look, what can you do? I mean, you can't have flowers all year round in an Irish garden.
No, you can't. You can't. You know, and it's fine. You know, I don't mind. You know, it's bare soil, but.
I think the other thing is, for people who know a bit about gardening or nothing about gardening, it's almost a lesson as you walk through this place.
Yeah.
For example, around the edge, we can see, I was going to say...
Naturalised bulbs.
Naturalised bulbs. I'm going to say daffodils.
There are daffodils in there. We have camassia through there. We have dog's tooth violets. We've got the loveliest little thing, Fritillaria meleagris, the checkerhead flower. It's a lovely little thing.
But the important thing is that the grass around it is mown, and where the plants are still flowering, it's been left to do its own thing.
Yeah.
So whilst the other beds are bare, you've got this, and so a gardener looks at this and thinks, "Oh right, okay, yes, I definitely know to do that with any bulbs that I have sown."
Absolutely.
And the gardener looks at what's going to be your wildflower garden and probably watches what you do through the weeks and copies it at home.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. You know, and it's because it's a manageable space. It's easy for the public to see what's going on, and we get regular visitors coming every week, and I think they do use us as a guidance for what they should be doing.
I mean,
was
that part of the remit to kind of provide information for the public?
I think, yeah, almost certainly. You know, it's, you know, any decent garden, people should be able to walk in and see that sort of thing anyway. But I think because it's on such a small scale, it's very easy to see it. You know, whereas in like the likes of Mount Stewart or the bigger gardens, you know, things happen and people don't notice. You know, but because this is, I mean, the whole site's only 3 acres.
Yeah, well, you pack a lot into it. The other thing that I think people love about this place is the fountain. Yeah, or the little pieces of public artworks that are dotted throughout.
Month. Yeah, so next month we have the Form exhibition. So our arts department do a sculpture exhibition in the garden for the month of June.
Oh, it's a more perfect place you couldn't get.
And so we get all local artists displaying various pieces around the place, and it's really nice. It adds a whole other dimension to the garden.
And then in June time, weddings?
We don't do any weddings anymore.
Oh.
No, we don't. The law changed, I believe, recently, and it became a bit more complicated to register places as venues. And I think we only did maybe 6 weddings a year here in the past. And I think the fees were enough to sort of not make that terribly economically viable. So we don't do weddings anymore.
Okay. Do you still get couples coming to have their photographs taken?
We get a lot of couples coming to have their photographs taken. We certainly do. Yes. Yeah, that would happen. That would be a sort of weekly occurrence for us.
I would say so. Now, I know we're crossing over the main...
This is the Rose Avenue Pass. So this runs east-west.
And then on the other side, this was a bit of a problem area for you for a while,
This was our main bedding area. So this section was formerly known as the Victorian Flower Garden. So it was a representation of Victorian carpet bedding. And we planted, I think it was about 10,000 bedding plants. And in the autumn that was supplemented by 10,000 bulbs. So it was a lot of work for us. Now they did look great, and in one level, you know, it was just so much work. So, you know, you're planting, say we're planting in October, you're planting 10,000 plants, 10,000 bulbs. And at this time of year, they're in full flower and they look amazing. And then you've got to come along, you've got to remove all that. You've got to shape the ground, fertilise the ground again. And then you're planting 10,000 summer bedding plants. And then you're removing those in October to make room for the winter bedding. So it was a huge amount of work. It's also not a very sustainable practice, obviously, bedding plants, a lot of wastage. And we've gradually, throughout the borough, we've been gradually reducing the bedding throughout the borough. And I want to get to a point where we have no bedding in the wall garden at all. it's about sustainability,
Yeah.
really, you know. I mean, bedding would have been a very Victorian idea, and certainly, you know, local authorities were very keen to do bedding. I didn't do any bedding until I got here. I mean, I did a good career in horticulture before getting here. And it was a real surprise to me how much bedding councils used, you know. And, you know, to me, you don't need bedding for colour. I mean, you know, the only bedding that we have in here now are these shamrocks.
Yeah.
They're not planted at the minute because we don't do winter bedding at all in here because it's just too wet and they rot out. So we do summer bedding in those. And yeah, I mean, it does look great and they do produce a lot of colour for that season. But I mean, to me, you know, there's so much else going on in this garden with herbaceous plants and shrub plants, and, you know, with the proper planting, you can get colour anyway.
And this was a damp wee spot as well.
This was
wasn't it?
this was very damp for us. So we had various attempts of trying to re-drain this area. There was originally drains put in at the first restoration, but we had put in extra drains and we still had a lot of moisture through here. The shamrocks filled with water and sat with water most of the winter, so all the bedding plants died and, you know, this sort of thing. So eventually we decided, first of all, we'll do no more bedding, and then I got a bit of a harebrained idea that we would remove the large trumpets of bedding, which were about 8,000 plants went into those, and we replaced it with a willow tunnel.
And we're looking at the willow now, and I can remember this. This looked like just big long bits of twigs stuck in the ground
Yes.
at the beginning, but
Yes, it did.
now,
Yeah.
now lovely young green shoots of willow are sprouting from them, from just
Absolutely.
the twigs.
Yeah. Willow's the most amazing plant, you know, it's so resilient. Clive Little built this for us, and he literally just stuck twigs, you know, sticks in the ground and whenever they were fully dormant, and bent them into shape, created this tunnel, and, you know, spring came and they budded and grew, and that's that, you know, produced roots, and they soaked up a lot of the moisture, which was our main thing. The other thing we had in here, and we've got problems with throughout the garden, is mare's tail. And it's one of the only times we ever use chemicals in the garden is trying to control the mare's tail. We got quite a bit of mare's tail coming through the bedding, and we couldn't obviously control it in amongst the bedding. So that's the other reason we turned it all to grass, because one of the best ways to control mare's tail is just cut it. Yeah, just literally mow it. And now there's, you know, there's mare's tail there, but you can't see it. You know?
What will you do with these lovely green shoots of willow then?
Well, this was actually pruned. So in January, one of my guys came through here and pruned about 2/3 of the thicker shoots off, left the young shoots. So next winter we will prune this all back. So by next winter it'll be totally established. So by next January we will take all these green shoots completely back, and it'll keep this very structured arch tunnel that you see. We couldn't do it all this year because it was still in its establishment phase, you know. So it's looking really well. And then we decided that we'd naturalise bulbs underneath it again, to just sort of break it up a wee bit and make it look a bit more natural.
And it does look so spring-like with the yellows and the bright light green. Just beautiful.
It's really fresh looking, isn't it?
It's lovely.
Yeah.
It really is. You're so lucky to work in a place like
Oh, I know. Oh, I know that. Oh, yeah. I have no... I'm under no illusion about how lucky I am.
Did you
to
live
work
in
here.
Bangor all your life, Nicky?
Well, I'm originally from Ards, but I went to school in Bangor.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
I went to school in Bangor, and I was working in Glenarm whenever I heard a rumour that council were doing this place up, and I was like,
Yeah.
And the job came up and I applied for it and got it, which I was absolutely delighted with myself.
Well,
so.
you know, I'm delighted too, because it's wonderful to have a woman in charge of this garden.
Yeah.
Because that's not the way it would have been 50 years ago.
No, not at all. There wouldn't have been any female gardeners even, you know, that was a rarity. And even throughout my career, you know, I've noticed a lot more women coming into it over the last 10 years or so. In fact, 2 of my members of staff are females.
How many members of staff do you have?
I've got 4 permanent members of staff, and then I have a couple of people on temporary contract, and they're both women. And then we also bring on a couple of apprentices. So
Lovely.
we've got 2 apprentices, and there's a male and a female.
Are they basing their whole apprenticeship here in this
No,
garden?
they do a section here. So their apprenticeship lasts 4 years, and they do a year in the garden, and then they do a year out with the squads and in offices and whatever, you know. So they get a full remit of what a parks department and, you know, working in the parks department involves.
We were nearly finished, and then a murder of hooded crows made their presence felt.
We're having terrible trouble with the crows. They're very tame. They are very curious. They're very intelligent creatures, very curious. So we find that if we plant anything new, they come down and they rip at it and tear at it. We have had a couple of instances when one of our volunteers has been attacked.
Oh no!
He literally landed on his head.
Oh no!
Tried to eat his German biscuits. And it's funny because he constantly has run-ins with them, so I'm like convinced they've recognised him. They know it's him, you know. And he had a run-in last week when he was eating a Danish when they were ganging up on him. It's hilarious, like you couldn't write it.
I wonder, did he feed them at one stage and now
he never did, but that is one of the issues that we do get members of the public that feed them.
Yeah.
And they think it's hilarious and think it's funny and stuff like that. And obviously this just makes them tamer and cheekier,
Yes.
you know. But we do find that every time we put a new plant in the ground,
They're over
they
to have a
come
look.
over and they nip at it, they tear at it. We set out a load of plants late yesterday for planting this morning. And whenever the guys went around to find them all, they discovered they'd all been moved. Some of them, they actually found 2 in the fountain.
There's nothing new we can really do because they probably live
There
in
is
Castle Park. I mean,
very little we can do about it. You know, we are experimenting. We were talking this morning about possibly having Bluetooth speakers that would play the sound of a buzzard or something like that. A kite.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so a bird of prey, because we did at one point last year, we had a falconer would come in twice a week and fly a falcon, which worked a treat. The crows all were terrified and they all took off. They tried to attack the falcon as well, but basically they didn't come into the garden. But, you know, 2 hours after the falcon had left, they were back down again. And unless we have a resident falcon, which unfortunately we don't, this is going to be an ongoing problem for us.
You know, they're cute to see in Castle Park, but they really shouldn't be there. What about grey squirrels? Do you get
We
them?
do have issues with the grey squirrels as well. Yeah. Yeah, we have significant issues with the grey squirrels. Although the crows do more damage than the squirrels do at this point. I suspect that's only going to get worse though. You know,
Yeah.
we find them, they come in more in the winter, I guess. They're hungry, they're looking for food. But you will notice as you walk around, there'll be like little divots in the ground, and that's the grey squirrels digging and hiding stuff.
Yeah. No, that's one of the nicer sounds.
Yes.
Blackbird or something. So we're heading back down here to this.
So yeah, these
gorgeous
are
fountain.
herbaceous borders here.
Yeah.
So we have 2 sets of herbaceous borders. These ones are our hot colour schemes. So these are all very oranges, yellows, very bright pinks, that sort of thing. Guys are doing a bit of new planting for me, removing some stuff that didn't work particularly well. And then the borders on the far side are all our silvers and blues and purples.
Well, how do you? I mean, do you have a computer program or a big book that lists every plant you have and where it's planted? And no, it's all in your head.
It's in my head, but also things like that tend not to really work because we move stuff around so much, you know. So there was an original, 15 years ago I did an original plan for these borders. To be honest, it's probably only about 40% accurate at this point, you know, because we're constantly moving things didn't work or they didn't do well or, you know, whatever. So the shrubby stuff has probably stayed more or less where it is, but the herbaceous is constantly being moved.
What about climate change? Do you think it has had an effect in those 15 years, or was it already
I don't
happening?
think, no, I think for us here in the Walled Garden, we've been fairly lucky because we're in such a controlled environment. The last 2 summers have been incredibly wet, which has affected like our crop and our fruit and stuff like that. But I couldn't say that we've had much of an issue with it as yet.
Is there anything really, really special coming later on in the summer that people might be interested to see? Any new plants, or would you recommend a particular time? We're already mid-April.
Yeah, people always ask me that. It's
I'm
difficult
sorry.
to say. No, it's no. I mean, I find it difficult to say that there is a particularly lovely time in the garden. I suppose maybe late August, September is nice because you've got all the dahlias in flower, the apples are in fruit, you know, the wildflowers in full bloom. These herbaceous borders are absolutely full of colour, and the vegetable garden's doing all sorts of great things, you know. So I suppose maybe late summer would kind of be my favourite. But, you know, I mean, standing here now in early spring, it's lovely.
It is just
you know,
gorgeous.
it's absolutely lovely. There's not as much colour around at this time of year, but there's enough, you know.
It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
I can see across the way that the volunteers are busy doing something.
Yes.
How long have they worked with the Wall Garden?
We have had volunteers for about 1.5 years now, and they are absolutely brilliant. They are a total godsend to us, you know. I mean, we are reasonably well staffed in the Wall Garden, but the volunteers put the finishing touches on things that we just don't really have the time to do, you know. So it's brilliant having them, and I think they really enjoy coming in. The team really enjoys working with them. And at the minute they're clearing area, weeding area to sow wildflower. So great preparation work for us. So before we come in and do the wildflowers, But yeah, no, the garden, I think the fact that the garden is so weed free and the edges are all neatly clipped and everything is just looking perfect is largely due to the volunteers being able to devote that time to us.
Yeah, they're very special. And from my own experience, I know if I have a question, they're only too happy to answer
Absolutely.
as best they can. And they're so nice about it as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, most of them are very knowledgeable, you know, if not all of them are very knowledgeable. There are a couple of people here that are here to really learn. But I mean, at the minute, we've got people over there, got a lady over there that taught in horticulture for 40 years, you know, so
you go and ask her questions.
So we can go and ask her questions, absolutely, absolutely.
Isn't Nicky fabulous? The Auricula Theatre we mentioned has drawn its curtains for this year as the plants have finished flowering, but it will be back next spring. If you enjoyed our conversation, please like, share and follow. We're on Spotify, YouTube and Amazon Music UK. Just search for Little Bangor Stories. Until the next time.